Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Happy Monday. Glad you made it. Sorry about that whole weekend, just flying by thing. It was a beautiful weekend for me. Gorgeous weather. How was it for you? Do anything fun? Love to hear from you this morning. You can always text the show. Let us know what you're thinking about and what news stories are big headlines for you. If you think we missed something, we want to make sure we try and cover it all. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. We'll be glad to hear from you today. I've got a lot of great stories and guests for you, as usual. I'm always burning the midnight oil to try and bring you the absolute best in conservative and libertarian talk news, not radio, live streaming in the mornings. And we're glad to have you here. Richard Bell, Jason Burdett, Corey C., Robbie Thurman is here, as well as John Rail, Chris Morrill, and Corey C., Caleb Vanderfeld's. Nice to see you. Morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. Chris Morrill's like, I see you're still treading on Bud Light's corpse. Well, I don't know what could be worse than a corpse. I guess being disintegrated after that. I mean, blotted out from history. Yeah, it keeps getting worse for Bud Light. The sales numbers are so dismal that the distributors around the country, many of whom are independent of Bud Light themselves, they work for themselves, they're just independent distributors, are now writing letters and op-eds in their local newspapers begging for customers to come back, saying they had nothing to do with the Bud Light ad starring influencer Dylan Mulvaney, which wasn't really an official ad. We'll talk a little bit about that more later at 8 o'clock this morning when Charles Adams of Big Angry Law joins us on the show. It's going to be his second time appearing with us today. You remember Charles Adams? He was on here once before. He's a great guest. He's a Houston area radio show host, as well as a former judge, police officer, and lawyer. Looking forward to talking to him today at 8 o'clock. Chris Morrill, absolutely correct. He says, if only conservatives attacked government spending with the same vigor that they attack Bud Light. True, amen. But here's the thing, Chris. They are attacking government spending now because Joe Biden is president. Did they attack government spending when Donald Trump was president? Not so much. We'll talk to John Miltimore about that, though, today at 7:30 a.m. The managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education is going to join us at 7:30 a.m. today to talk about the debt ceiling battle, which is actually threatening the U.S. economy. It's definitely the most precarious situation I've seen, and we've seen a lot of brinksmanship when it comes to the debt ceiling battle in the last dozen years. However, this time, for the very first time, a lot of alarm bells are starting to go off in the economy when you look at some of the indicators for what might happen if Moody's decides to downgrade U.S. Treasury bonds because of what's happening. And the Treasury officials are claiming that it's possible that by the end of this month, they will be unable to pay the debts of the U.S. federal government. We'll talk about that this morning, again, at 7:30 a.m. on the show with the managing editor of fee.org. That's the Foundation for Economic Education. He'll be talking to us today at 7:30. We'll be looking forward to that. At the top of the show today, why all of you who are here with us today, right now, everyone who is listening to this program is a white supremacist. What? No laughing. No, don't laugh.
No, God!
It's not funny.
No, God, please, no! No!
Everybody who's listening to this show right now live is a white supremacist because apparently, good morning, Anna Marie. Good morning, Anna Marie, you white supremacist. Waking up early is white supremacy. Blog post that was written on March 18th has been going viral, written by Anthony Bernardi, who wrote a piece in Medium about why waking up early is rooted in white supremacy. Matt Unruh is here this morning. Good morning, Matt. Did you get your AK? It arrived there on Friday, I believe. I hope you had a chance to be able to go and pick up that gift gun that we gave away to you, brother. And if you had a chance to shoot it, we'd love to hear your story. So we'll talk about this morning at the top of the show why all of you who woke up early with me are all white supremacists. You start your bigotry at 5 a.m., says Studio 314. I can tell this is already going to be a good show. Saria Palacios, the Latino white supremacist in the house. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all white supremacists. Well, I didn't sleep last night at all. Is that a loophole? No, I'm afraid not. You are a white supremacist.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Well, supremacy is
Excuse me.
7:18 this morning. Mike Rowe, the guy, the star of Dirty Jobs, has issued a warning that AI is coming for your white collar jobs. We'll talk about that, as well as some of the latest developments in artificial intelligence, which is just absolutely revolutionizing the world right now, and some of the latest updates. We'll talk about that at 7:20 this morning. At 7:30, we talked to John Miltimore. At 7:51, a really good article I read in Newsweek. Go woke, go broke. Millennials say it's true. Millennials are most likely among U.S. adults to support the expression "go woke, go broke." This is an exclusive poll that was done by Newsweek. Has found, despite wokeness is being typically associated with my age group, with millennials. We'll talk about that this morning. Should be interesting. And at 8 o'clock, we talked to Charles Adams. At 8:23, an interesting little story that I read: how intelligent people use the Winston Churchill rule to become persuasive. We'll talk about what the Winston Churchill rule is and how you might be able to use it to become more persuasive in your daily life. At 8:30 this morning, some loser psychology teacher with a Japanese name. I saw some Kitayama. So was his last name, Kitayama-san. Says psychology teacher from Michigan says that Westerners think they're better than they are, and Asians think they're worse than they are, and Americans, Westerners, think they're better than they are because of Western individualism. That's boy, so that's terrible. We'll talk about what this loser's findings were and why psychology isn't a hard science at 8:30 this morning. And I'll read this. It's going to be big brain time. So we're going to use some big terms. We're going to talk about why you Westerners you just think you're so much better than you actually are. The wording of the article and of the headline in this one just really got under my skin yesterday. We're going to talk about that this morning. So it's going to be some really good topics. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. And then at the end of the show, God, I hope we have time for this story, because Stephanie, as soon as I know it's a good story to discuss when I shoot over, because my wife will always be like, hey, what are you going to be talking about tomorrow? Any good stories? And so I just tossed this headline out. I didn't know if I was going to go with it or not. 70% of people cheat at bachelor and bachelorette parties. That sounds really high, which of course she immediately, because she's so smart, immediately asks the question, well, then what really constitutes cheating at bachelor and bachelorette parties? Which I honestly thought was a really good question. So of course we're going to dig deep into that, and I'll ask you to let me know. What do you think counts as cheating? My wife may take offense if I attack psychology. Just let me do it. No, she's used to it. I attack psychology all the time, and so does she. Someone who's works in that field. Um, but ask me how I know. All right, let's get it to the big show, the big news this morning before we get to our awesome guests. All right. The why waking up early is rooted in white supremacy. That's right. And Anthony Bernardi says that the notion of waking up early and starting your day with the rising sun is often associated with productivity, success, and a strong work ethic, meaning everybody here right now, right? However, this seemingly innocuous concept is not without its historical and cultural implications. Oh, here it goes. The historical and cultural implications, right? So, in this article, which is like this really short little article, doesn't cite many sources. I don't think it cites any sources, actually, when I looked at the bottom. There's no bibliography here. In this article, we will explore the origins of the early rising narrative and how it is rooted in white supremacy, contributing to the perpetuation of racial inequalities. There you have it. That's the premise. So if you get up early, you're perpetuating racial inequalities. Tell you what, sleep in tomorrow to stop white supremacy. That's a pretty good message. Yes, the origins of the early rising ideology. Here we come. Here's what Anthony says. He says the idea that waking up early leads to success and a disciplined life can be traced back to various historical and religious contexts. Interesting, because he doesn't actually list the ancient or historical context at all. Uh, In the Western world, this belief has been strongly influenced by Protestantism and the Puritan work ethic. Oh no, not the Protestant work ethic. No. What did it emphasize? Well, it emphasized hard work, diligence, and self discipline as virtues. No, we can't take it.
How dare you?
It's terrible. Jacob Champion says he's convinced me. I'm going back to bed. Good idea. Don't want to commit a hate crime. Everybody here who's up this early is committing a hate crime right now. White supremacy. Uh he's behind rough signal today. He got the AK. Might be a while before he can test it though. Oh, Matt, have fun with that. This work ethic has long been considered an essential component of the American dream and the idea that success can be achieved through dedication and effort. Well, I tell you, it would be kind of hard for me to be successful doing a Wake Up America show, an early morning talk show, live stream, if I got up at like 9 a.m., because that's when the show ends. So I don't know how long I would be successful doing morning shows if I didn't get up early. But here it is, the intersection of early rising and white supremacy. Okay, hopefully we're going to get some facts and maybe we're going to get some sources cited here, a little bibliography we can check out. And he destroys this entire premise in the first sentence. Here it is. The early rising ideology is not inherently racist. What? What the hell? The article title is Why Waking Up Early is Rooted in White Supremacy. He didn't say why waking up early is tangentially related to, potentially through a third party, second cousins of a friend's best, cousins who was the best man at his wedding. No. The title of the article, Why Waking Up Early is Rooted in White Supremacy. That's the article headline. Then later on down, if you actually read the piece, the early rising ideology is not inherently racist. Let me ask you something. Are the roots of a plant, he says it's rooted in, are the roots of a plant, are they is it inherent for a plant to have roots? So when you say something's rooted, roots are inherent. Am I wrong? Somebody help me out here this morning, please. For the love of God. Am I going insane here? I feel as if I'm going crazy. So he blows away his entire premise right there. He says the early rising ideology is not inherently racist. However, its connections to white supremacy can be seen when examining the broader historical and social context. Oh yes, you got to get really broad in order to make these kinds of connections and associations. During the era of European colonialism and the Atlantic slave trade. Oh God, no, he meant the Atlantic slave trade. Sorry, I'll do whatever you want. Please, just don't mention the Atlantic slave trade. He says the concept of hard work and productivity became intertwined with race. Yes, because it was only when the Atlantic slave trade began that people started to conceptualize hard work and productivity. That was when it became new. I is smart. I is wise. I is important. He must be thinking as he writes this. He says enslaved Africans were forced to work tirelessly from sunrise to sunset. That is true. And their white oppressors often used the rhetoric of hard work and discipline to justify their inhumane treatment. Okay, well, that's fascinating because if the enslaved Africans were forced to work tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, ask yourself this, and this might be a little bit of a politically incorrect question, but didn't somebody have to wake them up and get them to work in the morning? Wasn't there someone involved in that, enforcing the labor? They probably didn't just get up all by themselves and then go out there. I mean, somebody had to get up a little bit earlier than them, right? That's where the white supremacy began. Enslaved Africans were forced to work tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, and their white oppressors often used the rhetoric of hard work and discipline to justify their inhumane treatment. Gosh, if some of you guys need to talk to your bosses today, because he might be expecting hard work and discipline and for you to get up early today. Oh, Rare Camelia's here. She says school should start later. Wow, what is this all about? Anyways, so he says this created a false narrative that Africans were inherently lazy and needed the civilizing influence of their white masters to teach them the value of work. This stereotype has persisted and continues to be perpetuated in various forms, such as the model minority myth, which suggests that certain racial and ethnic groups are inherently more disciplined and successful than others. Fascinating. The idea that waking up early is a sign of superior work ethic and a key to success serves to reinforce racial inequalities in several ways. For one, it places the blame for economic disparities on the individual rather than acknowledging the systemic barriers that hinder the success of marginalized communities. Yes, yes. It is the community's fault that I'm unable to get my ass up early and get to the job. Isn't that always how it is? You know what? If I ever sleep in, if you're ever like, what the hell, Austin? Where's the Wake Up America show? Isn't it supposed to be on today? If that ever happens, you know what? I'm blaming y'all. Okay, I'm blaming every one of y'all. It's the system that done made me sleep in today. It's not my individual choice. It's it's the system that made me sleep in today, right? The early rising narrative, he says, perpetuates the stereotype that people of color are lazy or lack discipline, which can have real world consequences in areas such as employment and education. The stereotype can lead to discrimination in the workplace, he says, and contribute to the school to prison pipeline. Oh my God, where students of color are disproportionately disciplined and pushed out of the educated system. So, no bibliography, no sources cited, just broad-based strokes and a sentence which completely contradicts the first sentence in this piece. I have to say, well, congratulations, well done. All of you right now, it's 7:20 a.m. We'll consider it no longer early anymore. I will just say that it's too late. So for the rest of you, if you're a minority and you're just tuning in this morning, thanks a lot for blowing up the stereotypes. It's showing up the stereotypes this morning. All right, that was really terrible, Austin. Be careful, don't say anything racist. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Go woke, go broke. No, not that one. Mike Rowe. Oh yeah, you guys, are you fans of Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs? I know he's got a lot of conservative and libertarian friends, but he issued a warning on Saturday to white collar workers, saying that the robots are coming for your white collar job. Um, a lot of experts are arguing that the development of artificial intelligence could lead to more layoffs, and there are a lot of questions and concerns about what is next for the U.S. labor force. Mike Rowe issued a warning on, I guess it was on Thursday, about AI developments and what it means for the AI worker. He says, you can't put your head in the sand, but you can't panic either. He says, it's coming. You know, the robots are coming. The AI is coming, he said on the Big Money Show on Thursday. Yeah, it looks like Thursday. People used to say that robots are going to destroy skilled labor. Well, not really. I haven't seen any plumbing robots. I haven't seen any electrician robots. And I don't think we're going to see any artificial intelligence in the skilled trades to that degree. You can't stop it. All you can do is decide to freak out completely or not. Now, I don't know that I necessarily agree with Mike Rowe on this one. Do I think that there are going to be some job losses over this? Sure. Do I think it's going to be catastrophic? No, because a lot of times what happens whenever there's this a new massive revolutionary technology that's developed, people always think, oh well, it's going to get rid of certain jobs, but you forget that there still have to be people who manage the robots and manage the machines, and those jobs inherently become better quality jobs that are cushier and involve less manual labor. Now, manual labor jobs like plumbing and things like that, they're not really subject to automation because it's really hard to find an automated plumber. Perhaps in the future, that might be a way to automate some of the things that are done by plumbing. I know that 3D printing has started to reach its tendrils into the housing development, and they're now creating 3D printed houses. You know how high a quality of those houses are, I really don't know. But I was reading a really good article about that was being optimistic about artificial intelligence and what it might mean for the economy versus just people who would lose their jobs. About all the different types of opportunities that artificial intelligence might create, and it's popular on the right, and I think even on the left, to just to poop all over new technology whenever it comes out and claim it's going to destroy our economy, destroy jobs. Like one of the big pushes that some on the conservative right have been advocating for is to ban driverless trucks. It's quite quite frequently see like the national conservatives and anybody who is a conservative but not for economic reasons, right? Like a cultural conservative. You typically people and not all cultural conservatives reject economics, but like the cultural movement of the populist right these days does largely reject free market economics, one of their big pushes is to try and ban driverless trucks because they're arguing that we need to have protectionism in order to protect these jobs, rather than to be able to have, trucks that might be, efficient and more cost effective. You can listen to the show today, or you can text the show today, 573-319-1586. It's nice to see all of our friends over on Rumble this morning. Good to see Nelson65. Bitchamobile joining us from Rumble says, yesterday I learned from you that I can label my alarms. So I labeled my early alarm, cause climate change. Very funny. Very funny, Bitchamobile. And Relish, just every day in Rumble, for some reason, types in legendary Lee Kennedy over there. Have no idea why. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Looks like we got a nice big audience today. Grateful to have you all here. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on right now, especially over on Rumble. I'm really trying to grow my presence over there as well. And I'd be grateful to have your like and your subscribe over there on Rumble. Looks like we've got over 30 people watching us there. So we're kind of, the YouTube and the Rumble numbers are competing because we are multi-streaming, not just on Rumble and YouTube, but also on the Spreely app on the Freedom Hub network this morning. We're glad to be a part of that exciting new network. I've been making a lot of new friends over there, and we are still streaming on Twitch as well. Mr. Embry001 this morning, he commented and said, I drive a truck for a living. I hope they automate these things. I would love to do something else. You know what? You're a good dude, Mr. Embry. It's a very mature and healthy attitude for you. Are you sure you're conservative? You might be one of us. You might be a real libertarian there. It's nice to see. Come in, join us today. Oh, darn, it's 7:25. Okay, you know what that means? That means that I got to go get my buddy, John Miltimore. He is the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. If you're tuning in now to hear us talk about the Bud Light situation, we are going to get to that in about 30 minutes. I'm going to speak to Charles Adams. He's a conservative lawyer out of Houston, Texas. We're going to talk to him about the fallout. It is disastrous for Bud Light. The independent distributors are freaking out. They are begging customers to come back. We are going to talk about that in about 30 minutes. So if that's what you want to hear and you've got other stuff you got to do this morning, set an alarm saying white supremacy starts at 8 a.m. for getting up nice and early. 8 a.m. Central Time, so wherever you are, if you're on the East Coast, that's 9 a.m. If you want to come back and hear the Bud Light conversation, that's when it's going to happen. We're going to talk about the debt ceiling battle next when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Right back.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Well, it's still kind of early, and of course, we all know that waking up early is rooted in white supremacy. So good morning to all of our white supremacists who are joining us right now. Just kidding. I know, it's a joke. If you missed the first segment, you'll have to rewind it and watch it back. John Miltimore, who's joining us now, has no idea what the hell I'm talking about, but I'm sure he'll roll with the punches and play along. He's the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education, and he's joining us now. Good morning, John. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, AP. I got to go back and watch that segment, I guess.
Yeah. I was reading an article earlier about how waking up early is rooted in white supremacy, and
Of course it is.
we can't even wake up early without being called a white supremacist anymore. So I guess we ought to just sleep in.
It's ridiculous.
The time is ticking. The clock is ticking down on the debt ceiling fight. As early as the end of this month, the United States may be unable to pay its debts. The White House, the president, is arguing that he can use the 14th Amendment to unilaterally spend money, taking away the historic powers of the purse under the Constitution from the U.S. Congress. John, I'm looking at the stock market. They don't like it. I'm seeing Barron's and Moody's talking about our treasuries maybe being downgraded. Honestly, if you're invested, if you're in the stock market, it's one thing to be young and have no obligations and things like this. But like, quite frankly, when you see Congress doing stuff like that and screwing with our retirement funds, it pisses me off. What about you?
No, absolutely. And, this is nothing but a power play, showdown. We go through this dance. I don't know if it's every 5 years, every 10 years now. I kind of like the first 130 years of the country, there was no debt ceiling. Congress actually had to get together and vote for every new issuance of debt. And that's how it should be, like we should, and because that is like we've all took 7th grade civics. We know that Congress is the person. They're part of this. So they shouldn't have to simply rubber stamp what any president puts in front of them. But the whole debt ceiling, the way it's structured now, there's a lot of Congress on to do just that. Just raise the debt, whatever it is. And it really does invite this question: why do we have a debt ceiling at all? If people are just supposed to rubber stamp whatever comes down the line. So I get that there's it's just the politics behind this, but the cold reality is, if you look in recent history, the only time there's been meaningful cuts to the federal government, it comes during these debt ceiling showdowns. So I do think this is an opportunity to get some of this. I don't like the games. Here's the truth: the Biden administration should be doing this on its own. They've ramped up federal spending over the last several years. There's a lot that can be cut. They just don't want to play that game. They don't want to give what they see as leverage to the GOP. But the truth is, Congress is the purse, and you have two branches of Congress, two chambers of Congress. They need to get together and say, okay, what do we need to do here? Where can we cut some fat? Last I looked, we're at $32 trillion in federal debt now. This is not sustainable.
Now, we've talked a lot about the erosion of checks and balances, John, but I mean, one of the sacred items in the Constitution that typically has not been breached is Congress's fiduciary responsibilities to the taxpayer in managing the spending. Talk about like not needing what's the point of a debt ceiling? Maybe we should get rid of it. If the president of the United States can just spend money without the input from Congress, what's the point of having a Congress?
Yeah, there is no point, right? And that's sort of what, look back to ancient Rome, that's sort of what they had, right? You had one powerful person that was running the whole show. Like the Senate was still kind of there, it's kind of funny because you look back in these periods, you had all these senators, they had no power, right? It was sort of like, it was the fiction though, that they represented something. Right now Congress still does mean something. And we do want to keep that function. It is a huge check on centralized power. The fact that you still need a bunch of members of Congress to approve spending. This doesn't need to be such a big deal. Though the problem is now the modern president is always afraid he's going to look weak if he negotiates at all. It's the same thing like you don't negotiate with terrorists ever or anyone because you're going to just look weak doing it. And that's the problem with power politics. It's all about perception and like just sticking it to people. We should look at this like, yeah, we actually need to make some changes here. And if we don't, you can even talk to Biden's, Treasury Secretary. If you read between the lines, she's aware of the danger down the road. Like they're aware you can't keep spending like this. Let's get together and make some changes here. Do I think that's going to happen? No, because all the people in Congress want to do now is fight. And they're not even viewing this any longer through the lens of what's best for the country. They're viewing it through the lens of what helps us politically.
Good morning. If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you click that like button and subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on. A subscription helps us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, which my current guest who's joining us right now is all about. His name's John Miltimore. He's the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. I was reading an article in Newsweek magazine yesterday, John, and the title was this: Fox News host confronts Ted Cruz on his votes to raise the debt limit under Trump. Now, obviously, it's a hit piece on Republicans, but it makes some pretty good points. And Shannon Bream was the anchor at Fox News who was asking Ted Cruz what I thought was a perfectly legitimate question. Shannon Bream asked Cruz about the common criticism of the GOP amid the debt ceiling fight, that the party voted in favor of raising the debt ceiling 3 times under Trump without any spending cut requirements. Fair to say that Republicans have added to what we have now in the national debt? Bream asked. You voted multiple times to raise the debt ceiling under President Trump. So why is this different? Now, his response was, it's different because the magnitude of where the debt is massive. It was still pretty massive under Trump, wasn't it?
It was. No, and this is a great example, and kudos to Bream for pointing this out. The truth is, I'd like to see Democrats play this game a little bit too. Say, hey, we need some spending cuts, like when Trump was president. Say, hey, we need to get some spending cuts here, and that's really what it's about. But yeah, Republicans don't play this game when their own guy's in power, and that should be kind of chilling to us. We go through this dance every time when there's a Democratic president and Republicans hold Congress, or a chamber of Congress. Shouldn't be that way. And like I said, I propose we go back to the way it was for the first 130 years of the country, where Congress actually had to convene and vote on every new issuance of debt. And that was set up that way for a reason. Guess when that went away, AP? I bet you can guess.
I have no idea.
World War One, right? If you look historically, all the great checks and balances and the structures that were put in place for these years, the World War One and World War Two were these things, and the great infringements of liberty in the 20th century. They all happened during time of war, and it's sort of instructive for me. It's that old saying, like war is the health of the state. It is during times of wars when all the state really grows its power, and all these old checks just go out the window. It was, I think, looked at as like a temporary war measure to sell Liberty bonds, and it never went away. And then during World War II, they revised it a little bit. But yeah, but once upon a time, Congress had to get together and convene and issue debt, through a vote. And now we just have this debt ceiling, like, okay, stamp it, please. Let's move on so we can spend more. It's not the way it was supposed to be, and it's all built into the mechanism now that is just meant to swell government and to keep it, the money printers going and the government expanding.
John, one of our friends over on Rumble this morning, Mr. Embry001, he's a truck driver. He says, I sold 2/3 of my brokerage account over last Thursday and Friday, looking for a dip this week on the fear to buy back in. There's a lot of fear out there, John, and honestly, I'm kind of nervous too. I mean, thankfully, my wife and I are starting to stock up on gold through our friends over at Lear Capital, because I think that there is going to be a drop here. But what's going to happen if they don't manage to do this? I mean, I know libertarians like to say, "Oh, well, we've defaulted on our debt before," but not in this way, not in this dramatic a fashion, and not when our economy was in such a precarious state. What is going to happen if they don't manage to do this, John?
Well, first, I'm just going to reject the idea that they're not going to do it. They're going to get it done. Like, it's going to happen. There might be, again, we've seen it before where they fall behind, and all of a sudden all the national parks get closed for a month or a week, and you're like people are start to panic a little bit. They're going to get it done. Like we've seen this dance before. I do like, I didn't catch his name, the truck driver. What you say his name was Emmett or something?
Mr. Embry is here with us today. Yeah.
Embry, he's smart. He's learned this lesson too. He's already figured it out. You know what? They're going to get this done, but there's going to be a lot of fear and panic beforehand. It's going to get markets rattled, and then everybody's just going to keep, like, okay, rubber stamp. We're going to get it done. As much the GOP is going to try to save some face and try to get some sort of, cuts. Biden's going to do his best to offer nothing, but will probably give something. They'll both declare that they won, and then we can keep just racking up the credit card bill. Which is going to be $50 trillion here before we know. By the time I think my daughter's in college, I looked at it or something, like it'll be $50 trillion in debt. All of this is just sort of like it's a slow motion roller coaster, that's just collapsing. You can't say we didn't see it coming. We did. Like this is how empires fall, through wars and massive debt. And this has sort of been our path for the last 20-25 years.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. We've got a big audience in there today. It's nice to see. Combined with our Rumble viewers and with our YouTube viewers and on Spreely app and Freedom Hub and Twitch and on Facebook, it looks like we've got over 100 people watching us live this morning. It's great to see the Wake Up America show is growing strong. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, if you're enjoying what you're hearing and what you're seeing. The reason why my next guest, or my current guest, John Miltimore, is joining us right now is because the not just because John himself is a great guest, but because the institution he represents, which I highly recommend, the Foundation for Economic Education, has been one of the best sources that I've used ever since I got into politics over 12, almost 15 years ago, I think, somewhere in there. A little bit hazy about when I got started. I'm getting to be an old codger now. But the Foundation for Economic Education is a great resource for people who are looking for actual analytical insight into what's happening in not just our economy, but also what's happening in Washington, D.C., as well as comments on what's happening in American culture and around the world. That's why I bring John here, not just because he's a great guest, but because the institution he recommends that he comes from and that I highly recommend. Now, John, I know that these days you've been writing a Substack and you've been getting a little bit more active over there. Do you want to plug that, or is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go today?
Yeah, anybody listening, find me on the Take is the name of my Substack. I was gonna plug it in. I was gonna have it all ready. I could just hit click and people could find it in the comments, but I'll do it after this show. Over there a lot, and yeah, fees all over. Like we publish on Fee. We're also publishing all over on other websites, trying to get the message out there as widely as we can. It is, and not to make too much of a plug, but it's really a joy to represent Fee. Because you realize like so much what Fee's been saying the last 30 years, it's just spot on. You can go back, not just what we're writing today, you can go back and peek around the archives a little bit. Like there was a lot of the, really brilliant economists that were talking about exactly where we're heading. All this isn't written on the wall. We can still kind of change the course. But we better get on it fast. And it's worth the fight right now. It's a fun time. I don't know about you, AP. It's a fun time to be a libertarian right now, because we're like, maybe we're always the little guy, but right now, like there's so many targets there's so much that we can go after.
Yeah, it reminds me that
like there's no better time to be a libertarian.
It reminds me of that quote from that Marine in World War II. I can't remember who it was, but when they said that they were surrounded, he said, "Good, now we can fire in every direction."
Yes, no, it's exactly right. So yeah, it's great being here with you and enjoy coming on every week.
For sure, for sure. We got to give props to Studio 314, who dropped a super chat, says, "My money is more secure going to Wake Up America show than giving it to the Pentagon." Amen, sir. Thank you for the super chat. Oh, one last question here for you before we let you go, John. We do have a minute. Quest Fanning, he dropped a super chat as well. Thank you. And he asked the question, how can we tie the ceiling raise to zero deficit? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love it. I think there'd be, I don't know, legislatively, maybe you could do that if you had enough, pull in Congress. I don't think you'd see either party want to do anything along those lines. It's the same reason, I notice Republicans whenever they talk about inflation, they're always tying it to Biden's policies. Like there's the honest answer is the Federal Reserve, right? Like we're seeing what the Federal Reserve has been doing these all these years. This is why we have inflation, but how many Republicans actually want to talk about that? To me, it's creepy that both parties are on board this fiction, like, like, oh, it's all Joe Biden's inflation, or it's all corporate greed, or nobody wants to talk about the real, causes of inflation. Like when you print $5 trillion over a 2.5-year span or 3-year span, like that's how you get inflation, but nobody wants to talk about those things. There's not and it's not just Democrats or Republicans are playing that same game.
That's good stuff. John Miltimore, managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. We appreciate your time very much today, sir. Thanks so much for getting up early. And I'm sorry to say, though, that does make you a white supremacist. We'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks, John.
All right. See you, AP.
Thanks very much. What did you think of John Miltimore? Send us a text. 573-319-1586 is the text line. Let's see. Boy, have we got more good stuff to go. I know that for those of you who are tuning in this morning, you want to hear us talking about the situation with Bud Light and how desperate they are getting. And they certainly are getting desperate. We're going to talk about that with Charles Adams at 8 a.m. today. He's going to join us. He's at Big Angry Law on Twitter. Looking forward to hearing from him and his take on the latest battle in the culture wars. But before we do, here's a story. Go woke, go broke, ? Millennials say it's true. I thought this was interesting. Millennials are the most likely among U.S. adults to support the expression go woke, go broke. This was an exclusive poll done by Newsweek magazine, right? So wokeness is usually associated with millennials, right? Remember when they used to say millennial snowflakes, right? The millennials are such snowflakes. They're all woke. Well, a survey that was conducted on May the 17th of 1,500 American adults found that among those who had heard the phrase, 63% supported the sentiment. However, then that number was higher among those aged 25 to 34 and 35 to 44, that 35 to 44 being the millennials. Um, it's nice to see you all here, by the way. God, it's a big audience. It's nice to have. We've got over 100 people. Like, I'm getting a little bit nervous. Wow, listen to you guys out there. Oh, wow, thanks for the applause. Made me feel a lot better. We're grateful to have the Wake Up America show audience, the Cantina crew, joining us over here. I know some people were like, well, why are we over here on YouTube? Well, as Tolly Owens answered, we started gathering here to get AP monetized and just sort of stayed. Yeah, YouTube's streaming service is the most robust in terms of monetization. But we multi-stream because, as you saw, I got 14-day ban there on Twitch. So you got to be careful, and you got to spread your seed as widely as possible. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Millennials are generally seen as being between about 27 and 42 years old, they say. Now, the term woke is kind of a colloquialism that has been introduced in recent years, but a general working definition might be is to be aware and actively attentive to important societal facts and issues, especially of racial and social justice. That's according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. John Miltimore says he wants to talk about Bud Light next time, AP. You certainly can, John. And don't forget to drop your Substack in there. You might have to send it to me because I think we have some kind of restriction on dropping links in the chat, and I don't know how to undo that. I'll try and figure that out later. But if you send that to me, I'll drop it in the chat during a commercial break. But when I think of woke, my working definition is it's a subset of postmodern theory or critical theory, which is the idea that the concept of race essentialism, and the idea that your traits and your qualities are inherently tied to your race. So when I think of wokeism, you can think of social justice as part of it, sure, but I also think of the concept of postmodernism in this philosophy. We can get into that a little bit later when I talk to Charles Adams here in about 10 minutes about the absolute disaster that is Bud Light sales, where independent distributors are begging customers to come back. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but I thought this was a really good setup for it. This Newsweek poll that showed that my generation, millennials, are the most likely to agree with the concept of if you go woke, you go broke, meaning that essentially, I would say the kids are all right, but I guess we're not kids anymore, right? But the phrase go woke, go broke has really been getting a lot more popular, right? As a slogan that's been leveled at companies that are accused of burnishing their progressive credentials, think Bud Light, usually with marketing ploys that seek to appeal to marginalized communities or portray inclusive values, right? And here's the thing, not everything that is gay is woke, but everything that is woke is gay. What? What does that mean? I'll explain a little bit later. The poll for Newsweek found that those who were aware of the phrase "go woke, go broke," right? 72% of 25 to 34-year-olds and 70% of 35 to 44-year-olds agreed with the sentiment expressed. So that people my age group are very much in agreement with the idea that if you go woke, you will go broke, right? So the phrase has kind of become a battle cry for people who have been outraged by moves like Target, for example. Did you see that the new line of clothing that they're offering for transgenders, where it's like men's swimsuits with like the little tucking pouch underneath? Not quite sure about that one. Chris Morrill says, I think in retrospect, Missourians may come to regret trying to take down one of Missouri's largest employers. Just a thought. Yeah, well, that's but isn't that kind of the whole point, Chris, of a boycott, is that people are supposed to sort of sacrifice in order to advance their principles? And I'll ask that question to Charles Adams when he comes on. He's a Houston-based attorney and a talk show host at Big Angry Law, and he really is very libertarian. I guess he comes from the conservative right, but most of the things that I see him tweet, which is a lot of them are like retweets of me saying Austin is exactly right, which of course makes me like him very much. We'll talk about that. There is a call to boycott Target, says John Rail. Yeah, I have seen that, but who knows if that's actually going to go through. I was actually, and can I ask you, weren't you shocked at how far Bud Light's protest has gone? I mean, have you noticed just how wild, like, in terms of, have you noticed, how long it's been going on? Because most people, you would think that they would just get over it, because a lot of these boycotts, they come and they go. But the fact is that this has not ended. Bud Light distributors are issuing public pleas to bring back angry customers. A beer distributor in Montgomery, Alabama, is speaking out against Bud Light's decision to partner with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. They're running a 1-minute radio ad in about 10 radio stations in the state. The Bud Light brand, of course, has been facing this big backlash for a while, but now Alabama is getting in on this. The distributors are pushing back because they, and like you say, Chris, a lot of people are employed by these independent distributors. Um, Here's what they wrote. We at Bama Budweiser, an independent wholesaler, employ around 100 people who live here, work here, and our children go to school here. We did not, and as I said before, did not support this issue involving Dylan Mulvaney. There was one single can made. It was not for sale, and it wasn't properly approved. As a result, the Bud Light brand has new leadership. Dylan Mulvaney's not under contract. See, this is a lot of this is very desperate sounding right here. Now, the Bud Light brand has seen a steep decrease in sales, with their competitors Miller Lite and Coors Light seeing an increase. And to smooth over relationships, Anheuser-Busch gifted a case of Bud Light to every employee of its distributors and promised to increase its marketing expenses for the brand. So they gifted a case of Bud Light to everybody who works there. Oh, God. Uncle Shirley says, I don't like Bud Light and I don't like Target. I agree with you. I think Target is just way too pretentious and overpriced. I mean, for God's sakes, I'll just take some Walmart. Now, if we had something that was like Don Quixote, because when the wife and I went to Japan earlier this year, they had a department store that was just wild. It had characters everywhere, really fun products. Like they had a grocery store in it, kind of like a Walmart would have. But then it was also like fun, like things like fireworks and like fun, cutesy products. And then also they had like adult toys and things like that in there. I was kind of like, what is this? What is this? You wouldn't see things like that here in the United States, but maybe we should. Anyways, and in Japan, this woke stuff, it doesn't exist. They don't have it over there. Like they don't have the kind of gender confusion, which ought to tell you that this really is a social contagion. It's not like it's something that's going on under the surface all over the world here. Although in places like Iran and Iraq and other places, it might be a little bit more closeted, in Saudi Arabia and places like that, Qatar. Anyways, I mean, the reason why I chose this to be a top line story is because it was a top line story on the Wall Street Journal yesterday about how Bud Light blew it, one blunder after another. Right, the brewing giant behind the brand has kind of become a case study now on how not to handle a culture war storm. I'm looking at this chart provided by the Wall Street Journal about the weekly sales volume in the United States and the change from a year ago. And it's shown Coors Light and Miller Lite taking off about a 15 to 18% increase in sales over the last year. Bud Light has fallen off a cliff. They have gotten a negative 30% sales volume in the United States change from a year earlier. I mean, no matter how you feel about the culture war, no matter what side you're on this one, the fact is that a marketer has one job, and that is to sell more product. And if what a marketer does results in these kinds of results, it was a failure. It was a failure. I mean, if you're the most pro LGBT libertarian, left libertarian in the world who hates Bud Light or like loves Bud Light for doing this and is a big fan of Dylan Mulvaney, it doesn't matter. You still failed in your job as a marketer. Your job is to make your company money, and you didn't do that. You failed at that. And quite frankly, that's what matters. Money talks and BS walks. And drinking Bud Light will always be gay. Just kidding. Oh God, they're going to take me down off Twitch. I'm going to get another 14-day ban on Twitch. I just know it. I got to go to a commercial break. Why? Not because I want to, because I don't want to, because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to check the numbers on Rumble, and they're going to drop off a cliff like Bud Light sales. And then I'm going to check the numbers on YouTube, and they're going to drop off a cliff like Bud Light sales. Don't go away. We're going to talk about this topic with my buddy, Charles Adams, who I promise you his point of view is going to blow your mind. We'll be back with more on the Wake Up America show. Don't leave. We'll be right back. While you're here, just visit apforlibertyshop.com. We'll be back with more on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericashow.com. If you're just tuning into the show, make sure you click that like button and subscribe to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty, which is what I'm all about. Joining us now on the show, one of our sort of newly favorite guests. The last time we had him on, everybody was clamoring for us to bring him back. His name is Charles Adams. He is a Texan. He's a lawyer, former police officer, and he's also a conservative talk show host. I guess we might have to call him a libertarian, though, these days, because he retweets me so often and says Austin is right, which just makes me wonder, is he really a conservative? Good morning, Charles. How are you doing, sir?
To be honest, I've never considered myself conservative. I consider myself fiscally conservative and socially liberal. I've long defended the rights of everyone to live how they want to live without the government, a nanny state, telling them how to do it.
Wow. Well, you don't really hear the term fiscal conservative much anymore these days because conservatives have kind of abandoned that concept and, in fact, turned against it. But that's a conversation for another day. Let's talk about economics here. The economics of Bud Light not looking so good. These independent distributors around the country, including here in my home state where, Budweiser was born, are complaining and begging customers to come back after the sales in the last year for Bud Light have dropped by 30%. Now, no matter where you stand on the cultural divide, tolerant, intolerant, pro, against, The fact is that if you're a marketing professional, your job is to make money for your company. This is an epic fail for Bud Light, no matter how you look at it, right, Charles?
Oh, truly. And it evidences how a Missouri-based company deciding to take their marketing division and put it in Manhattan and hire Harvard-educated marketers to make policy decisions is just very short-sighted, or short-sighted is being generous. It's just stupid, right? And I think clearly, I don't think you have this groundswell of anti-LGBT beer drinkers who just want to show their hate by not drinking Bud Light. I think a lot of people across the spectrum find Dylan Mulvaney to be a bit cloying and false. And then when you had a lot of people have underscored Alyssa Hirschenfeld's response, which is she's trying to move this brand from, I think she used the term fratty, and really kind of just a condescension to everyone that drinks Bud Lights. And I would also like to point out, having been in a fraternity in the Deep South, although decades ago, we drank better beer than Bud Light. Really, I think it's more of a working class, hey, I've only got so much money to spend, and this is what I'm going to, this piss water is what I'm going to pick over something better. But I think it's this East Coast, big city condescension that people are just tired of.
If you're just tuning into the show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. This is the Wake Up America show, and Charles Adams is joining us now. He is a self-described Houston TV and radio loudmouth, a criminal defense and injury lawyer, and ex-police/judge. We're grateful to have him here this morning. We're talking about the controversy involving Bud Light. Now, Bud Light has been getting hammered from both sides on this one, Charles, because we can kind of see it a little bit more clearly on the right why the backlash is coming, but on the left, from the left, now they're getting attacked on their social credit score because they've kind of backed away from this trans marketing campaign, and now the left is punishing them by sort of suspending their corporate equality index score, which assesses companies on their policies towards LGBTQ employees. I guess a good question might be, what would you do if you were Bud Light? Because now not only did you lose all your customers before then, but the ones you were trying to bring in, they all hate you now.
Well, they were never bringing those customers in, right? There's never going to be a huge groundswell of consumption of Bud Light. I live in Houston's LGBT neighborhood, Montrose, right? Historic, one of the 3 historic gay communities in the country. And I've never seen a whole lot of Bud Light being drunk here, right? I mean, they drink fancy stuff, right? They're fruity stuff with, I don't want to stereotype, but it was never their market. And the thing is, there seems to be this kind of New York City, Harvard, and I ended up at Harvard, right? I worked my way through undergrad in my first law degree as either a bartender, a bouncer, or a police officer, right? So I had a very different Harvard experience. But when I got there, I found most of the people to be just absolutely awful. So, and I mean, they just are. There's these people that think they're better than everyone else and they should condescend to everyone else. And somehow condescending to people is a cool thing, right? And you clearly, Miss Hirschenfeld was infected with that. Clearly her response was, but also her marketing, right? I don't know why you make this decision, right? Because it shows that she has a complete disconnect from who drinks Bud Light. And I have plenty of friends that do, right? And I make fun of them for drinking piss water, but they do it, right? Because it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's what they've been drinking since they were standing outside of a 7-Eleven asking an older kid to go in and buy them cold beer, right? I mean, it's how we all started drinking, and some of us evolved from it. But really, it's, I think America as a whole we're just kind of tired of being lectured about politics by our soda companies and our beer companies and in our fast food and all the crap we stick into ourselves that we probably shouldn't be. We don't want it served with a lecture, right? We want it to be served with maybe a heaping dollop of nostalgia. And really her take, or the general take on, oh my God, they used to have women in bikinis and play rock music and big trucks and all that's so horrible. Well, that's a little bit offensive to us that, I just got me a new big truck, and I don't know about you, Austin. You probably don't. I personally love women in bikinis, right? And I've been loving women in bikinis since, I don't know, I was 6th, 7th grade, right? When, the neighbors across from Ryan Oberfeld's house gave us a box of porn they shouldn't probably have given us. Young women that inherited their uncle's property. They were probably 19 or 20 years old, and they didn't want the Wee magazines and stuff. The stuff we considered hardcore back then that would be considered, tame by today's standards. But, there's nothing wrong with it, right? There's nothing wrong with finding the female form to be beautiful, especially in a bikini. There's nothing wrong with liking a big truck. I know we're being convinced that there's something wrong with it, but there's not, right? A private jet causes far more environmental damage than a city worth of cars, right? It's all just telling us how we live is awful, and we should be ready to sacrifice it to move forward. And it's just a bit insane.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. That voice that you're listening to and probably laughing at right now is Charles Adams. He is joining us now to talk about the brouhaha with Bud Light. Charles, can I ask you, is this a win? Is this a victory for the conservative movement, for people who are pushing back against wokeism in the culture? Would you say that this is a big victory, a notch in the belt?
Well, I don't think Kid Rock shooting a bunch of beer with a semi-automatic rifle is a victory, right? I think it's just pandering silliness, right? And I think on the other side of the debate, let's not forget, like in Mississippi, there's been a student that is presented as a woman throughout their career in high school, but they've just been denied the right to walk just this past weekend if they didn't dress like a boy underneath their gown, right? And it just seemed a bit mean-spirited, right? Why do we care? I think that it's insane that you see trans women displacing women in sports. And it is, I respect people's rights to live as trans women. I also think women should have their own spaces where trans women are insisting, or people dishonestly claiming to be trans women lesbians are going into spaces that were designed for young women, young girls to have a private experience, whether it's a shower after swim class. We saw that in America with an 18-year-old student. I think we need to return to reason. I don't think the conservative agenda, which, honestly, let's be, Alan Turing saved us all from World War II and then committed suicide when he was convicted of being gay in Great Britain in the 50s. Probably people credit Einstein being the smartest man in recent history, but it was clearly Turing. All of our computers exist from that, right? Up until just here in Houston, I worked at the Court of Appeals here in Houston as a briefing attorney when they affirmed the right to tell people they can't have gay sex in their home, which was then overturned by the Supreme Court. I found that to be absurd, right? And, liberty isn't just the flavor of liberty you like. We all should enjoy liberty and embrace it. But the conservative hate mongering towards gay people has been going on for decades. So with the pearl clutching being shocked that the pendulum swinging too far the other way is a little bit absurd. But wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be crazy, Austin, if we all just said, hey, let's be reasonable. Let's not have books that show butt plugs being inserted in junior highs, but let's do have books that say, hey, it's okay to be gay. Stop being, I'm not going to curse because I don't think you can. Stop being an A space hole, right? Just stop doing that, right? But also stop being these narcissists who, like Leah Thomas. What a horrible human being, right? What a person who decided, well, I'm not doing very well competing as a man, so I'm going to switch and I'm going to crush everybody. And when it gets so much media attention, I'm going to kind of slow down so I don't beat them by like 8 seconds. But I'm still going to knock these girls that have been training to compete for their whole lives off podiums, right? And then you have to deal with the pearl clutching. Everyone seems to forget, right? The whole Korean spa controversy in Los Angeles where the mother said, hey, this person with a penis just got in the pool with my 12-year-old daughters, and they were vilified. And Antifa sat outside that place and protested for months and screamed. Turns out it was a sex offender, right? At some point, we have to say, hey, look, trans women should have a space, right? Let's make a space for them, but it's not necessarily where women are. And conversely, I just read this article about the female to male transition surgery costing over $500,000 billed to an insurance company, right? And a lot of people don't realize, thanks to Obama era policies, all of our insurance programs are, because they changed from transition to affirmation. Orwellian words are important. All of our insurance plans have to cover that. So that means that cost is spread out amongst all of us, even if we don't need it, right? That's a little bit insane. And at the end of the day, we're having these dishonest conversations. I think it's horrifying that the suicide rate in the trans community is so high. I think it's horrifying that conservatives, a larger portion of conservatives than anyone else, treat gay people like they're just immoral for existing. And I think that attributes greatly to the number of people that want to see themselves as trans, because we don't just tell people, hey, if you're gay, hey, it's cool, man. Whatever, awesome. Live your life however you want. It's not our business. There's all these conservatives. It's immoral. Let's 2015, Ted Cruz is going to Kentucky to cheer not letting people get married, right? Well, shut up, right, Teddy? Sweaty Teddy Munster Cruz.
I definitely want to talk about Ted Cruz. Yeah, and they forget that eating a cheeseburger is also immoral because you can't, eat something that's been boiled in the milk in its mother's milk. So, but we like to pick and choose our selective morality on that one. But we'll get into that at another moment. If you're just tuning in the Wake Up America show and you're still here with us, congratulations! You win the I'm Not a Snowflake Award because Charles Adams just said a lot of offensive things to people of both left and right. As you can probably tell, we're very libertarian-minded people here on the Wake Up America show, but we also have open minds, and we welcome everybody to sit down and join us. We're equal opportunity offenders. And that used to be the domain of conservative AM talk radio, although in recent years, it seems that it's becoming more and more corporatized. Myself, someone who up until recently worked in the conservative talk radio space, I can tell you very much that it's not a risk-taking kind of a venture as it really used to be, right? It used to feel much more like, guerrilla warfare against the elites. But nowadays, you're more likely to get a poll over what type of ice cream you like than anything else. And my current guest, Charles Adams, is joining us right now. He's also an expert. He knows all about it because he's worked at. Are you currently still working in AM talk radio,
Yeah,
Charles?
I have a talk show on iHeart's kind of second tier. We have two conservative talk stations in Houston, and I have a 2-hour weekday show here in the evening after I get done with all my other jobs. Yes, sir.
Well, your senator, Ted Cruz, has introduced legislation to protect your job, Charles. He wants to require that automobile manufacturers include AM radios in their vehicles as a way to protect conservative talk radio. What is your response to that?
I think that it's silly if the focus, and it sounds like from him, the focus is purely protecting conservative voices on your radio dial. I think it's a little bit different. The Democrat that co-sponsored it with him is worried about emergency response systems being tied to AM radio. It seems like we have other methods for delivering that now. We get them all on our iPhone. So I find that to be a bit disingenuous. I don't know, right? I will agree with you that conservative radio is very corporate, right? I'm on the second tier, probably AAA station, and I get a lot of freedom to say whatever I want. But they do very little in form. They don't pay me very much. It is purely, I am a hobbyist. I'm not trying to get syndicated, because if I were to get syndicated, I would have to pick a team, right? And I've been told multiple times. Also, I endanger my opportunity to do stuff with the mainstream media by refusing to compromise my values. So I'm kind of stuck in between. It doesn't make me a hero. I make a bunch of money as a lawyer. So I've given myself the economic freedom to tell everyone to kiss my ass. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, I was filling in on the big show, on the big station for the AM news talk show, which is very well watched. But I had a guest on who was a former director of ICE, and I argued with him because I found his position to be, he very Western European immigration centric. I am very lawful immigration centric. We need to have a controlled border, and we need to make it easier for law-abiding poor people to come in here legally, and we need to throw people out that commit crimes while they're here. It's not rocket science, right? But we had kind of an abrasive interview, and scores of fragile snowflake conservatives. Oh my God. Oh, he just, and it's like, shut up. So there isn't a lot of brave voices in conservative, because they're mercenary, right? They are being paid. Their whole entire living depends on what they say into the microphone. And for me, I have fortunately, by working, 80 hours a week most of my adult life, and we talked about it during the break, that's now getting up early is now white supremacy, right? Which is, it seems like academia, the way to get your article published is to tie anything to white supremacy, and then, oh, well, let's get amplified and platformed. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, you're the rare breed, Austin. Like, your willingness to say, hey, I'm going to cut my throat and not have all the opportunities I could have, it's crazy. Not many people are willing to do that. And that's why you have corporate talk radio. And Freddie, Teddy, Sweaty Munster is literally just trying to protect his cronies and his buddies. And that's not very capitalistic, is it?
No, it's definitely not. And obviously, I don't support it because I think that we need to allow the marketplace to determine if AM radio is a medium that needs to survive. People will buy it and decide to upgrade their radios and put AM radios in there. But of course, you can listen to your favorite conservative talk radio show online. Most people stream their shows online, so it's not like the change isn't coming. It's absolutely coming. But if you're a conservative broadcaster and you've paid $1 million to buy an antenna, or you've got a transformer and things like that, then of course you want to see your investment be protected. So it becomes cronyism to a large degree, Charles. But in regards to the cultural question of what conservative talk radio has become, Rush Limbaugh kind of saved the brand. He kind of saved it, and then it sort of dies with him in a way, because who really are the influential voices in conservative talk radio anymore? I mean, people don't even really like Sean Hannity. The conservative movement has turned on Sean Hannity and kind of moved on and past him. And there was a lot of love for Tucker Carlson, but he wasn't a talk radio personality. He was a television star. And now he's taking his show to Twitter, and he's going to be doing his broadcasting just like we're doing it right now, streaming live online. So, the internet is really kind of like the actual free market, at least to a certain degree, which is why they want to suppress it and censor it and take control of it as much as they can, Charles. But there's this sort of this gap between, I guess it's a generational gap of people who listen to talk radio, because I think it was like only 8% of people who listen to talk radio are in what we call our key demographics, or the people who are young, who have money, and who actually can spend money. But it sort of is it's going to go, the way of the boomers, right? The way of the dodo bird. It doesn't really make sense to try and subsidize it and keep it around. But, the people who have all the power and who have all the money in a certain generation, they're going to use their resources, their money to keep it alive. Am I right?
Well, I'm older than you, but when I was a kid, MTV came on and Buggles told us that video was killing the radio star, which turned out to not be the case at all. But internet and the accessibility of Wi-Fi everywhere is most certainly killing the traditional radio star. That's what most people attribute it to. I find it to be a little bit different. I think that we've seen iHeart and other large companies eat up all the local programming, right? Our lieutenant governor, who I cannot stand, I think he is just false and nonsense. But Dan Patrick here in Texas, he actually got famous. He was a radio personality, and after a bunch of failed businesses, and then bought a radio station, brought Rush to the Houston market in the 80s and exploded, right? But these were local programming, and the station I'm on is pretty dedicated to local programming, and they let me say whatever I want, right? I'm not on the big show. I'm in the evening, although typically the highest rated on the station. They don't tell me anything. They don't care. Just let me say the crazy stuff I want. That's not the experience that most people are having on AM programming in their big cities and their small towns. It is corporate programming with telling people what they can and cannot say, and an incredible amount of dishonest pandering, right? Which is why I don't like Dan Patrick. And as they've killed gambling and they've killed legalized weed and all these things for faux morality reasons, which are really just somebody, Louisiana, Oklahoma gambling lobbyists paying to not have it here, and InBev and other people not wanting weed to be legalized. I mean, I just think at some point people want honesty, and they're finding more honesty on the internet, and we're also finding more, charming dishonesty too. But local programming and local radio companies, they're dead. We're all just becoming this idiocracy. And, Mike Judge was right. We're all going to be dumb in a few years, and it's going to be our own damn fault.
Well, that's why people like to listen to this show, because we call it big brain time here on the Wake Up America show. And while we might not be dominating online, we do have over 100 people watching us live this morning, and we're grateful for that audience. Charles Adams, I really love your point of view, and your tweets are fantastic. I've been following you now for about a year, and of course, I'm super grateful for you being so generous with your time and getting up early with us today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners? Perhaps anything that you'd like to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, I don't really need to plug anything. I mean, I'm really good. You're never going to have me selling anything to anybody. I make a very, very nice living. I will thank you for having me on and let me say whatever the hell I want, because it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this with you, and I really appreciate it, Austin.
Well, we're super grateful. Again, I know it takes a little bit to get up and to get your suit on and to be ready on camera in the mornings like this. So
I'm naked
grateful.
from the waist down. It's
Charles Adams at Big Angry Law on Twitter. I'll plug him so he doesn't have to. Thank you, Charles. You have a great day.
Hey, you too, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Charles Adams. What did you think? Boy, man, there's a lot of people going to be offended by some of the things that he said. I'm sure some of you are steaming listening to that. But that's what the Wake Up America show is. You're going to hear points of view here that you're not going to hear anywhere else. And some of that is going to chase people off. I know it and I get it, but I'm willing to lose money if it means that I can be myself. But I'm not like Charles. I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a podcaster, a libertarian podcaster, and I'm trying to make my way in the world. That means that I'm going to sell you stuff. The Wake Up America show is brought to you in part by our friends at Lear Capital, our precious metals leader. And if you are like me and you're watching the debt ceiling battle and you're saying to yourself, God, I'm so sick and tired of watching my 401k take a steep dive, one of the best ways to secure your portfolio is to have precious metals in your portfolio. Do you have gold and silver in your retirement account? Well, why not? It's super easy to invest in gold and silver. You can get gold and silver coins delivered to your door from Lear Capital, sure. But if you're thinking about retirement and you're saying to yourself, wow, I'm sick and tired of watching the stocks just fly, all the money just fly out of my account, investing in gold and silver is a great way to create a cornerstone of value that will not fluctuate wildly with the swings of the marketplace. My friends at Lear Capital have an investment path for you to maintain financial security. Visit their website, learaustin.com. That's LEARAUSTIN.com. Much prefer if you give them a call, 1-800-885-2175. Write this number down, 1-800-885-2175. Lear Capital believes in the Wake Up America show. They believe in this message. They believe in freedom, and that's why they've chosen to sponsor me, and I believe in them, and I endorse them, and I highly recommend that you visit them today to learn more. Get a free information packet from our friends by visiting learaustin.com or call them today, 1-800-885-2175. I endorse and recommend Lear Capital for all of your gold and silver investment needs. You can buy gold and silver, have it shipped directly to your door, and then you say to yourself, wow, my gold and silver went up like 5%. I think I'd actually like to sell it. Well, they'll buy it right back from you. There you go. What do you think? Cheeky Mare says she got her Invest in Precious Metals lead t-shirt. She's going to wear it to the range next time she goes. Where did you get that, Cheeky Mare? I think we all know. I don't want to plug that yet because I can't plug something else while I'm doing a plug. Lear Capital will send you a free gold and silver informational kit if you visit that website today. Just find out more. Don't worry, they're not going to just inundate you with sales calls. That's not how they operate. They might give you one call, answer any questions you might have, and it's a really interesting phone call. You can learn a lot. Again, there it is, 1-800-885-2175. All right, now listen, I know I just did a commercial, but I've got to reset. I read this article yesterday. I'm going to go to a brief commercial break. I read this article yesterday in, what was it, The Atlantic? What was it? Oh, no. This is INC. I thought this was really interesting. How emotionally intelligent people use the Winston Churchill rule to become exceptionally persuasive. Right? So essentially the idea of using emotional intelligence like Sir Winston Churchill did in order to advance your agenda? What is it? We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the Roaring Twenties brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Do you have any real-world experience?
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway.
I need help.
You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Great Monday. Big audiences on our streaming platforms. Nice to see you all here today. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Boxcast, the Freedom Hub app, that's Spreely, speaking freely, as well as on Rumble. Nice to see you all here today. I'm super glad to see our audience just continues to grow. And by the way, I think I owe Quest Fanning like maybe his money back or something like that. I see he keeps doing super chats over on YouTube. Thank you. I know I missed a couple of them. Let's see if I can scroll up. He says, the root of the problems are when they took away male spaces. There you go. Thank you for that, Quest. I appreciate that. Barney Styles has been a member for 1 month. He became a Gold Freedom Ninja member today. And I've been really happy to see our audience over on Rumble starting to get more chatty. Our friend Bluterike joining us today. Jawohl. Good to see you, brother. 50 people watching us over on Rumble. If you're liking the content, make sure you click like and subscribe to my channel here on Rumble. I'm at AP for Liberty. Well, I'm AP for Liberty everywhere, but make sure that you click like and subscribe so you can come back and join us as we have discussions about the biggest news of the day, because the Wake Up America show is every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. So you can set your clock by it. We'll be there. And pretty much, every single day. I pretty much almost never take time off. Did a little bit earlier this year. We got 2 more stories to go. One, how intelligent people use the Winston Churchill rule to become more persuasive. And I won't have time to talk about that psychology teacher who says Westerners think they're better than they are. I might sneak that in tomorrow because I want to talk about this other fun story at the end of the show about how 70% of people cheat at bachelor and bachelorette parties. Yeah. That's a fun one. We always like to end the show on like a fun or a funny or a ridiculous topic, and so we will. But I thought this was an interesting story today. Some news you can use, right? As we kind of go past the anniversary of Winston Churchill's blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech, as he became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, leading the nation against the Nazis. Next month will mark the anniversary of his Fight Them on the Beaches speech. That was the one in which he sought to convince his countrymen that the war was not lost. And then we'll hit the anniversary of another epic speech, the Finest Hour address, in which he urged Britain to fight on alone, even after the French had surrendered. If you've studied anything about World War history, or maybe if you've just seen Dunkirk, you might remember that this truly was the most dangerous era of the war for the United Kingdom. Churchill's back-to-back national addresses were very important factors in persuading the country to continue to fight on. Now, what made Winston Churchill so persuasive? Well, there are 2 reasons for that, and both of these reasons you can copy and use if you need to be persuasive in your business or your life or whatever. These are 1, emotional intelligence, which I think a lot of people struggle with, and 2, which you might recoil at this, but poetry. Timothy Riley, who is the director and chief curator of the National Churchill Museum, says that it's true that he used poetry, and it was one of the reasons why he was such a great speaker. He didn't use words, he wielded them. So let's start with the emotional intelligence on this. Churchill understood that you can leverage emotions, yours and other people's, in order to achieve your goals, right? He understood that whether we realize it or not, communication happens on many levels. Among them, A, the message you intend to give, B, the message the audience hears, and C, the emotional message that they take away from it. If you've ever gathered your team for a big announcement, like good news or bad news, right, and then watched afterward as they walked away feeling the exact opposite of what you'd expect they'd feel, then you've seen this in action, right? So if leveraging emotions and passions was one of Churchill's goals, how did he manage to stay in control, even with an audience of many millions? Right, well, this is where the poetry comes in. Most people wouldn't have known this at the time, but in the decades afterwards, historians have studied the drafts of many of Churchill's speeches. They realized that Churchill often didn't write his addresses in prose with long paragraphs and traditional grammar, right? Instead, his drafts often looked like poetry with short lines, broken text, and single words or phrases on their own lines for emphasis, right? So if you were to write like this, right? Simple. Actually, we can do better than that. For one thing, you can actually look at his drafts on his website. So let's take a look at what we have right now, right? So here's how his speeches came out. I'm going to pull this up for you actually on the screen. so that you can take a look at how it was poetry. Here we go. Let's go to Twitter weirdness, bring up the scene. Emotionally intelligent people. If you're watching us live, you can see it. If you're listening to us later on the podcast, sorry about that. This is a visual show first, and I do like to do my best for our listeners, but right now we're going audio visual. So here we go. So here's Churchill's speech. You can see it's written very much in, iambic pentameter. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be freed, and the life of the world may move forward into the broad and sunlit uplands. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a dark new age. Consider that, and how the emotional impact of that must have been felt by those who were listening to him giving that speech, the passion of the words right there on the screen if you were seeing them, even without hearing them, right? But I highly recommend that you listen to his speeches and how his intonation conveyed his emotion and how he was able to convince people of his of the justice of his cause. Now, there's kind of like a temptation, I think, at this point to say something like, you don't necessarily want to rehearse every line of the speech or write it out as if it were all poetry. But if you do that, if you try it in your first draft, try and write it initially in as if it were a poem, whatever message it is that you want to convey. You might be surprised at how great an effect your speeches will have on the audience, right? So Churchill probably didn't think of himself as someone with high emotional intelligence, right? Because that's kind of a new term that's been coined, after his death. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense that in order to convince people to continue fighting on when Britain was in its darkest hour, it would require a high level of emotional intelligence. A lot of people wanted to give up. As a matter of fact, the king who abdicated before, and the reason I know a lot of this is because my wife and I have been watching The Crown lately. The king before he was palling around with Hitler. The British people got lucky that the king who took over very much was in Winston Churchill's corner, and that the United Kingdom was able to stand through the dark times before their allies, the United States, got involved in the war and really saved their skin. Okay, 8:40, there it is. All right, so I have one last topic that I want to share with you today, and then I have 20 minutes. The Wake Up America. Good morning. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, we're grateful to have you here. Thanks so much for watching the program. Before I get to the next topic, though, I do want to talk about one of our sponsors on the show, our friends over at shellshockcbd.com. Do you all know John Burke? Have you guys been introduced to John yet? We've had him on the show before. I'm going to get him back on this week. But I want to highly recommend his products for those of you who might be having trouble sleeping, those of you who have a lot of aches and pains, and certainly me with my martial arts, I get a lot of aches and pains these days. I highly recommend our friend John Burke's products at shellshockcbd.com. As you can see over here, I've got a nice layout here as I pull up my Vanna White. Oh, that's Price is Right, not Wheel of Fortune. Sorry about that. Does anybody know the Wheel of Fortune soundtrack? How does the Wheel of Fortune one go? Wheel of Fortune. I don't know how the jingle goes. I only know Price is Right. My friends John Burke over at Shell Shock CBD has you covered for your aches and pains. He's got CBD gummies as well as Delta 8 gummies, which I've kind of become an evangel for because I was a skeptic, a CBD and Delta 8 skeptic, until my buddy John sent me these package full of his products, which his company is high quality. And I tried his Delta 8 gummies thinking, this stuff isn't going to work. Because I initially was going to turn him down when he asked to advertise on this podcast because I can't sell something that I don't believe in and that I don't think works. And as somebody who's extremely skeptical, I didn't think CBD or Delta 8 was effective until I started using my buddy John Burke's products. I can tell you they are extremely effective, and I highly recommend the gummies as my favorite. There's multiple kinds. Some are non-psychoactive, some are psychoactive. So, for example, these Fallout gummies here, the watermelon ones, these are THC free, right? So these contain CBD. So they're not going to give you the kind of, THC effect that you're familiar with. But then, of course, we have ones that contain Delta 8, ones that, like, for example, this green apple, which are quite tasty and delicious. The Halo gummies contain Delta 8. And before you make your order, just make sure that you can see that it's legal in your state, because there are, like, I believe 8 states where Delta 8 is not legal. But if you're in the state of Missouri, then you're perfectly fine. Visit your website, shellshockcbd.com. Use my code AP for Liberty to get 10% off. And the good news is that if you don't like the products, John's got a money back guarantee. So if you don't like what the products are that you got and you want to return them, you can. You'll get your money back. Visit shellshockcbd.com and use that code AP for Liberty so that you can get that 10% discount, and I can get credit for John, and he can continue to sponsor the show. So the Wake Up America show continues to be brought to you live every single day, because it's not just, Lear Capital and Shell Shock CBD and support from listeners like you that keeps us alive, afloat, and continuing to grow. It's been exciting. This September, we're going to come up on the 1-year anniversary of the Wake Up America show. Pretty cool, huh? Very grateful to have our audience over here. Mr. Embry, Bluetreich, Nelson65, Chris Morrill, Studio 314, Cheeky Mayor, Quest Fanning, Jamie Marie Pope. Nice to see you. Brandon Meyer is here. Good to have you here. I have no idea what you are referring, says Brandon Meyer. Very funny. All right, let's continue on. So this one sparked a really interesting conversation with my wife and I, as you might imagine. Over 70% of Americans cheat at bachelor and bachelorette parties. Okay. Over 70% of Americans cheat at bachelor and bachelorette parties. Have you ever been to a bachelor party or a bachelorette party? And was there some cheating going on right there? Well, I guess it depends on how you define cheating. Let's share this article with you from the New York Post. Don't lap dance and tell. More than 70% of Americans have cheated on their partners while attending a raucous bachelor or bachelorette parties. This is according to a new survey. Bonusfinder.com surveyed 6,000 people. That's a big survey, including the soon-to-be betrothed and their guests, about any frisky business at these events. And they defined cheating as this: ranging from flirting or downloading a dating app during parties to sexting or sleeping with someone other than their partner. Okay, so that's a pretty wide range, right? So flirting is cheating. I think a lot of people would consider flirting to be cheating. I know a lot of people would be upset if they saw their significant other. So Stephanie defined it perfectly. She says, cheating would be anything that if you saw me doing, that if you did it, if you saw me doing it, you would be upset. So that actually got me good right there. Got me good, Odell. Got me good, Odell. Unfortunately, she got me good on that one. 70%. That's a lot. Chris Morrill says, is going to a booby bar cheating? Depends. Bella Gandhi, she's the founder of Smart Dating Academy, says that bachelor and bachelorette parties, it's the last hurrah. These events are often fueled by alcohol, controlled substances, peer pressure, and a lack of communication between partners. There really wasn't a lot of peer pressure at my bachelor party, but I have seen like bachelorette parties and heard about it. Like these girls, they go insane and they they almost force the bride to do things that she doesn't want to do. Now, the most common instances of infidelity were relatively chaste, right? Relatively, including receiving a lap dance. So that was 33.1%. And smooching, 21.3%. You see, kissing to me is obviously cheating. So smooching, 21%, right? Of people said that smooching went on and that it was cheating. I definitely see that as cheating. But getting a lap dance, I'm not sure that receiving a lap dance is necessarily cheating. So, boy, the conversation between Stephanie and I was really interesting yesterday, because we're talking about, receiving a lap dance. If Stephanie was with me at a club, at a booby bar, and I got a lap dance, well, with her permission, I think it wouldn't be cheating, right? But if I went to a club, a booby club, without her and got a lap dance, would that be cheating? Probably. right? What do you think? I'm honestly, this is why I thought this was a good topic, especially a good one to end the show on, because I didn't feel like, Chris Morrill says, I didn't have a bachelor party every day from 1995 to 2016 was a bachelor party for me. That's kind of how I felt, honestly. I wasn't even going to do a bachelor party, but my buddies were kind of like, we're doing it. And I was like, all right, fine. So I did the bachelor party thing. But receiving a lap dance, not cheating, were they fully clothed? Well, I don't think, is there such a thing as a lap dance fully clothed? I mean, I don't think there's such a thing. I mean, I guess there might be, but it's not really a lap dance, at least in my opinion. But yeah, receiving a lap dance, some people think it's cheating. Delaware topped the list as the most unfaithful state, with nearly 89% of its residents admitting to cheating on their partners. Delaware is Joe Biden's state, by the way, just so you know.
And look at her. She looks like she's 19 years old, sitting there with her, like a little lady with her legs crossed.
Oh, jeez, that's Joe Biden there at strip club.
No,
Oh,
God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
Yeah, Delaware topped the list as the most unfaithful state. Nearly 89% of its residents admitted to cheating on their partners while attending bachelor or bachelorette parties. Now, you would think, okay, well, Delaware, it's coastal, East Coast state. They're definitely going to be acting a little bit goofy up there because that's just how, left libs act. But guess what the second highest state was in terms of cheating? North Dakota. Pretty wild, huh? So North Dakota, 85.7%, right? It topped the list as, or it didn't top the list, but it was number 2 in terms of the most unfaithful state. North Dakota, and the third most unfaithful state, 84.8%, Idaho. Idaho? God, the jokes write themselves. I'll let you write them down in the chat. You can also text the show at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you consider to be cheating is really the question here. The most committed states, on the other hand, were Nebraska with 57.1% admitted to cheat. So still more than half admitted to cheating during their bachelor or bachelorette parties. Number 2 most committed state, Vermont. The 63.6% of Vermontians admitted to cheating, and Maine, 64%. So 64%. We're talking about cheating at a bachelor or bachelorette party. And so if you've had a bachelor party or a bachelorette party and you're willing to share with us kind of what you experienced at your, I mean, was there any kissing? I mean, no offense, but to the strippers out there, but I mean, who kisses a stripper at a bachelor or bachelorette party? Does that happen? That didn't happen at my bachelor party. Nobody was kissing any strippers. Were there lap dances? Sure. But I just feel like kissing a stripper. Have you ever had a lap dance? I mean, there's just something, I don't know. I might have had one in my life that was exciting or, anything other than, you know what? Lap dancers are one of those things that, like, in your mind, if you've never had a lap dance, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. How much fun that must be. God, we're really having a blast. I'm sure there are people who enjoy it, and, it's a free country. You enjoy it. I think that it's just not for me because I don't know. There's just the skin is, and maybe it's because they're naked, but their skin is like clammy and cold and stuff like that. And honestly, I just feel bad for them. You know what I mean? I just kind of feel guilty. I don't know what to say about it. It's that's like not too inappropriate because, yeah, you just got to watch what you say about things like this, to be honest. So, anyways, I just feel like it's not for me. You almost do it because of the peer pressure. Somebody's like, oh, let me buy you a lap dance, all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, fine. Then it's kind of like, what do you do? I don't know. And then it's like, I don't know. I will never forget my first experience with something like that. It was in Springfield, Missouri. And it was one of those bars where they let you in when you're 18, but there's no alcohol at the bar. And it's just kind of like, man, here's the thing. Rural America for strip clubs is just not, it's not good. It's not good. They don't take care of themselves out there in the in the boonies. It's not like farmers' daughters are going out there and working at the strip clubs. It's, we Midwestern states have a little bit of a drug problem, and our number one drug is methamphetamines. And you know what that does to people. And then they get up there and get naked on stage, and you can't help. They've got like a young person's body, but they've got an old woman's face. Do you know what I'm talking about here? It's just, all right, I'm getting uncomfortable. Anyways, so I think I probably have worn out my welcome on this one. I wanted to talk to you really briefly before we go about the new items over at apforlibertyshop.com. My beautiful wife, Stephanie Peterson, who I love very much. Hi, Stephanie. Can't wait to talk about this when we get home. She made a brand new item over at the AP for Liberty shop, the Thomas Jefferson Live Free or Grill Apron. Yeah, the Libertarian Christmas is coming, the 4th of July. Make sure that you visit apforlibertyshop.com because items like these, all of our 4th of July collections are all 10% off right now. Visit it right now. Get that 10% discount. It's awesome. Live Free or Grill, Thomas Jefferson Apron. We're going to be adding new items in the 4th of July collection every day. And every single one of the, even the new ones, are all going to be getting the 10% off treatment. I made this awesome new design yesterday. A 7 beers ago Abraham Lincoln can cooler. And I know how libertarians feel about Abraham Lincoln, but who cares? He's a part of American history. And it's a great item. Check it out. 7 beers ago Abraham Lincoln looking badass. Get yourself an awesome koozie right there. Remember, you're like, oh my God, $12 for a koozie. Well, guess what? The shipping is free, bro. Free shipping. Okay, so that's what you pay. And then you get it delivered. How about that, right? We've got the 7 beers ago koozie, and I've also got an awesome t-shirt. 7 beers ago t-shirt. Get yours today. I made that design myself. 7 beers ago. Get it now before the 4th of July comes so that you can wear it out and get people talking about your cool shirt. And they'll say, where did you get it? And you'll say, I got it at the AP for Liberty shop, right? Visit apforlibertyshop.com today. Support your fellow patriots. I'm a firm believer in the Constitution and the principles of liberty, economic freedom, personal liberty, and I get up early every day despite it being considered a hate crime and an act of white supremacy to bring you the absolute best in news, talk, and opinion. You know, these interviews don't just fall from the sky. Do you think people want to get up early in the morning and put on a suit and talk to me in the morning? Well, they do. They do it for me. They do it because of my charm. Right? Support your fellow patriots who are fighting the good fight for freedom today by visiting apforlibertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, apforlibertyshop.com. Get yourself an Abraham Lincoln 7 beers ago shirt. You're going to want to wear that at your 4th of July party. And remember, 10% off all of those items. But if you're a monthly subscriber to the Wake Up America show, you get 20% off all those items. Check it out. Hey, Tolly Owens, you rock. Jamie Marie, you rock. Cheeky Mare, you rock. Barney Styles, you rock. Doug H, Jacob Champion, Barney Styles, Caleb Vanderfeldt, Arvolt24, Chris Morrill, and all of our friends like Robbie Theriman and others. Brandon Meyer over on YouTube. Great to see the Cantina crew. You know we love you very much. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a pat on the back for getting up early. You little white supremacists, you. And also got a shout out to my Rumble people as well. Nice big audience over there. Blutrike, Nelson65, and Bitchmobile, as well as Relish, commenting over there. We're making new friends slowly but surely. Make sure you click subscribe over on the channel over there so that you can get updates whenever we go live every Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time, the Wake Up America show. We just keep getting bigger and better. See you tomorrow on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me